This is a reading from Hell and Its Torments by St. Robert Bellarmine. If the faculty of intelligence shall suffer all these things, what shall we say of the will, which is the principal cause of sins? The will shall be tortured forever by a rabid envy, which it shall conceive against the glory and honor of all the saints and against God himself. For, as the psalmist says, the wicked shall see and shall be angry. He shall gnash his teeth and pine away. Psalm 111, verse 10. Nor shall the wicked gain that which he desires, for the desire of the wicked shall perish. Psalm 111, verse 10. Hence there shall arise in the very wills of sinners an implacable hatred against God, and from hatred in turn shall be born those horrendous curses and unheard of blasphemies which shall never fail to sound from their lips and mouths. They shall have no further hope of recovering salvation. They shall know of a certainty that never can they return to the grace of God, that never shall their tortures be ended or mitigated. They shall see that it is God who holds them bound, as it were, in chains, in these everlasting punishments, that it is He who has hurled upon them the lightning from on high, that it is He who has kindled the furnaces of hell by His almighty breath. Then they shall rage like rabid dogs, and never shall they cease from barkings, blasphemies, and contumely. They shall curse God because He has created them and condemned them to death. They shall curse God because He is now continually killing them, yet never allowing them to die. They shall curse His power because it is torturing them so mightily. They shall curse His wisdom because no foul deed of theirs escapes its notice. They shall curse His kindness, which for them has been turned into ferocity and a verdict. They shall curse His cross and the blood shed upon it, because it has benefited so many. They shall curse the Queen of Heaven, because she has been for many sinners the gate of life and mercy, but to themselves has now become a cruel stepmother. Finally, they shall curse all the saints, because in the midst of their own torments they shall see them rejoicing and shouting in triumph. These curses shall be their everlasting symphony. These curses shall be their matins and vespers, the psalms and hymns which shall be chanted in that mournful temple of demons, where instead of incense there shall be sulfur, instead of candle wax there shall be smoke rising up from pitch and fire, instead of harps and organs there shall be the screech of chains and the sound of hammers and scourges. Truly, if the mere telling of such horrendous things strikes terror and generates respect, what shall it be actually to dwell in that place of eternity, where these things are spoken and heard? And what ought we do? And what ought we to do that we might not be compelled to participate in such mournful solemnities? The prophet Jeremiah recalls that the Lord showed him 2 fruit baskets full of figs. One of these contained figs that were good, and very good indeed. The other contained figs that were bad, and very bad indeed. Figs that could in no way be eaten. Unless I am mistaken, the prophet here shows that these 2 kinds of figs are a figure of the 2 kinds of people who will exist after this life. For we shall all come to a state which is good and very good indeed, or bad and very bad indeed. There is no middle state between the state of the blessed, which is good and very good indeed, and the state of the damned, which is bad and very bad indeed. For the fire of purgatory, which appears to be a middle state, shall remain in existence up to a certain and definite time, whereupon all souls who are there now, or will be there in the future, shall be made partakers of everlasting glory and felicity, and shall come upon that state which is good and very good indeed. That the state of the blessed is good and very good indeed, we shall with God's help show in our next sermon. That the state of the damned is bad and very bad indeed will be made clear from what we have already said and from what we have yet to say. Thus far we have shown to the best of our ability that the sorrow which arises from the loss of the highest good and which torments the faculties of the inner soul is mighty and indescribable. Now we shall show that the sorrow which the punishments and torments of hell shall work upon the external senses of the damned is a most atrocious one. The prize of the blessed is not a certain particular good, separate and distinct from other goods, but is a certain common and general good, containing within itself all goods, all pleasures, and all delights. Boethius defines it thus: a state made perfect by the aggregation of all good things. In like manner, the penalty of the damned is not one specific kind of sorrow affecting the head or kidneys, teeth, or eyes, but is a certain general penalty spanning all the sufferings of the body's members, joints, and senses. Here on earth, we never experience the general suffering of the damned, just as we never experience the general good of the blessed. For a person with a pain in his eyes does not likewise suffer it in his teeth, neither does a person with pain in his teeth suffer also in his eyes. And we may apply the same yardstick to the rest of bodily pains. But in hell, the most ferocious pain shall at one and the same time be borne in the breast, the kidneys, and in every joint, nerve center, marrow, sense, and faculty of the body. For as the sinner has used all of his members to offend God, so there shall be no part, nay, not the slightest part, of them which shall not have its own proper torturer and executioner. I ask you, if one of us were to be tortured by this general penalty for the duration of a single day, what would he feel? How long would he judge that to be? But would not single moments to him seem longer than months, and single hours longer than years? Indeed, my dear people, if we were to see a dog in the street, tormented by such general pain, I doubt not that we would be most mightily moved. If it can in any way be described, this is the penalty. This is the pain by which damned human beings shall be tortured in hell, and not for the duration of a single day, but for the whole of boundless eternity. But let us here proceed to a little more diligent and attentive consideration of all of these various kinds of penalties. The eyes, because they look upon all things, deservedly offer themselves first for our consideration. These eyes of ours, here and now, cannot be satiated with pleasure. They gaze with such avidity on beautiful forms, like keepers of curiosities. They swiftly fly to see ludicrous, trifling spectacles. Like impure whoremasters, they so often lead meretricious images into the bedchamber of the heart. The only thing they cannot bear to look upon is the calamitous woe of the poor and the wretched. What cross do you think will torture the eyes in hell? Of a certainty, the first thing they will see are the horrendous forms of demons. To look upon a devil is so horrible that the experience is said to have cost some people their sanity and others their lives. St. Bernard, in commenting on the 90th Psalm, tells of one of his monks who had been visited one night by a certain horrible figure. For the whole of the following day, this monk had almost completely lost his grip on his reason, and never for a moment imagined himself to be safe. Finally, at a time when all the monks happened to be asleep, he gave such a shout that he woke them all up and utterly filled them with terror. Cassian, also, in the Collations, relates that among the ancient authorities, hermits, there existed at times such a tremendous dread of the devil, who was wont to appear to them in different but always horrible forms, that none would dwell alone, nor would they who shared a cell together dare to sleep at all at the same time. While some slept, others kept waking vigils, and never did they refrain from the singing of psalms and hymns. If here in our world devils can claim for themselves such power over us, if we fear them here so mightily, what, I ask you, shall they do in their own territory, where they will fear neither exorcisms, nor holy water, nor the merits and prayers of the saints? If they thus prowl about here, where they are so mightily expelled, what shall they do in the place where they govern and rule? Suppose a man were to walk into a cemetery. If the mere suspicion of their presence should come upon him, it would be enough to make his hair stand on end and his voice stick in his throat. What a disturbance shall come upon sinners when in that common cemetery of the damned they shall meet face to face with so many monsters, phantasms, and chimeras. Also, what a cross shall the eyes of the damned suffer when they see their wives, parents, and children in the same torments. Hegesippus has left us an account of the destruction of Jerusalem. Alexander, son of Hyrcanus, and captain of the Hebrews, when he wished to inflict the most atrocious penalties on a certain group of people, ordered that 80 prisoners should be crucified in the city square, all at the same time. While they were yet alive, each of their wives and children were to be cruelly slain before their eyes. In this way, the wretches would suffer not one, but many deaths. Nor is this manner of punishment lacking in hell. There, with weighty grief, shall children see their parents, and parents their children, husbands their wives, and wives their husbands, yea, and all who have been the cause of another's sin. bearing them company in the tortures of hell. My dear people, I know that at this flourishing university, that is, Louvain in Belgium, where the sermon was given, a great many young men, truly modest, quiet, studious, and religious young men are being reared up and instructed. I am aware of this partly by what I have heard from others and partly by what I have observed myself. I greatly rejoice at this and give thanks to the common Lord of us all for it. But I am also sorely grieved at heart at hearing that among so many upright young men there are those corrupters and corrupted who move among them, who encircle those who are simple of heart, and by their works entice them to drinking parties, or to dances, or to other incitements of lusts. Woe unto you, foul man, imitator of the devil, pest of youth! Do you thus dare to be envious and to rob the state of so great a good? What shall you do when you see yourself in the company of those whom you have deceived, in those living combustions of flames? Oh, how often will you then say, perish the day I first saw you, first sought to address and deceive you? For by hurling you to the vice of drunkenness and to other crimes and scandals, I was hurling myself into these torments. He, in turn, shall reply to you, perish the day that first brought you to me as a thief and executioner of my soul, the day I first gave ear to your poisonous sermons. This shall be the duet, the symphony of these wretches. But this symphony now admonishes us to make the transition from eyes to ears. Ears which heretofore delighted in lewd songs, rejoiced at hearing infamy and detractions against neighbors, listened slothfully for hours on end to hawkers in the public square, yet were wearied by a sermon lasting a mere hour in church. These same ears will hear in hell nothing but groans, bellowings, cryings, contumelies, blasphemies, and curses. For just as in the kingdom of the blessed the divine praises and the sweetest alleluias are always sung, so in the dungeon of the damned shouting and blasphemies shall resound forever. These are the hymns which will be sung to the tone of hammers and scourges. I recall reading Plutarch's Life of Sulla. One day that cruel dictator ordered 6,000 men to be assembled in a tight circle. At the same time, he gave orders that the Senate should be convened in a temple not far away. He then instructed soldiers that when he made his speech in the Senate, they were to slaughter these 6,000 men as quickly as possible. Thus, when Sulla, the dictator, began his address to the senators, the innumerable clatterings and clashings of striking swords were heard continually, sounds that were mixed with the shouts and groans of those who were being slain. The dictator admonished the senators to listen to the proceedings in the chamber, and not to be curious or pay attention to what was going on outside. Nevertheless, all the senators were frightened and frantic, and could scarcely concentrate on the address. From this we may conjecture what a symphony, what organs and harps we would hear if it were once permitted us to place our ears at the doorway of hell. Where not 6,000, but many more, beyond compare, cry, shout, and bellow forever, are slaughtered, scourged, and struck forever. What shall we say about the sense of smell? No bilge trough can be found so unclean, no sewer with so weighty a stench, that it can compare with the lake of hell, into which all the filth of the whole world must be thrown. Saint Victor Africanus gives a description of the torments inflicted on the holy martyrs by the Arian Vandals. He confirms that one of the most atrocious of their pains was the stench of the dungeon. The saint so speaks regarding the 4,996 martyrs who were tortured together in the same dungeon. He reports that in the narrow confines of that dungeon, the confessors of Christ were thrown literally one on top of the other, like ranks of locusts, or, as we may more properly say, like precious grains of corn. In that congestion, none was allowed a place of retirement to see to the needs of nature. Crushed by necessity, they left their dung and urine in the same place, so that the stench and horror surpassed all the variety of their punishments. The Vandals, after their race had been eclipsed by the Moors, were punished mightily by the Moors in their turn. They were publicly led into the same dungeon, and, upon entering, sank up to their knees in a veritable whirlpool of mire. Thus, the Vandals themselves saw the fulfillment of the prophecy of Jeremiah. They that were brought up in scarlet have embraced the dung. Lamentations chapter 4, verse 5. My dear people, compare this punishment of the martyrs with the tortures of the damned. In the dungeon of the confessors of Christ, there were but few people. In the dungeon of hell, there shall be innumerable people. In the former, only the filth of human beings arouse the stench. In the latter, all the filth, dung, offal, foulness, and heavy stench of the whole world shall be gathered together. If then the stench of that earthly dungeon surpassed all manner of punishments, who shall be able to bear the incomparable heavier and more horrible stench of hell? Who can read without horror of that novel kind of torment, whether it is true or fictitious, which the Latin poet describes when he says, "Indeed, he joined dead bodies to living ones, linking hand to hand and mouth to mouth. Singular torment, he killed them slowly, and in grim embrace they flowed with slime and gore." Virgil, Aeneid, Book 8, lines 485 to 488. What shall we say to this? That a living and healthy man should be bound to a lifeless cadaver? That a wretched man should waste away from breathing that foul stench, from worms and corrupt matter issuing from a corpse? That a living man should be slain by a dead one? Is not the mere hearing of such a thing to be shuddered at, let alone the witnessing of it? But if this manner of punishment seems to us harsh and monstrous, as truly it is, what shall we say of the stench of hell, which shall arise up from the so many putrid bodies? But if the sense of smell suffers these things, shall the sense of taste, which is wont to be the cause of weightier and much more numerous crimes, be immune from punishment? My dear people, shall not drunkards and impure gluttons then know and know truly for the first time at what cost they have purchased those exquisite dishes and drinks, which here on earth they reckon to have been bought for a paltry price? Truly that sense of taste will be tortured with incredible hunger and thirst. They who cannot now endure a 2-day fast, and reckon that they have not satisfied nature unless they drink to the point of intoxication and vomiting, shall then be tortured with such hunger and thirst that nothing more grievous can be thought of or contrived. Who would not be moved by the words of the rich man in the gospel? Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water to cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. Luke chapter 16, verse 24. What greater poverty can be thought of? What lesser thing could be sought by that rich man who at one time feasted sumptuously every day? Luke chapter 16, verse 19. He whom the most exquisite wine could not satisfy does not seek so much as a cupful of water, nor, which is more wondrous, does he beseech Lazarus to dip his whole hand in water. He does not ask for so much as a moistened finger. He asks merely that Lazarus dip the uttermost tip of his finger in water, and even this is not granted him. These things are told to us that we may know that the sentence of excommunication and interdict passed by the Lord upon the damned is so universal that no one can offer the slightest counsel or help. Whithersoever the damned shall turn their eyes or stretch forth their hands, they shall know that all access to counsel or help has been closed to them. They who have fallen into the middle of the ocean constantly stretch forth their hands and feet, even as they suffocate and wrestle with death. Still, they meet with nothing but water, which eludes all their endeavors and attempts to grasp. Even so, shall they who have fallen into that uttermost sea of misery suffocate therein forever. They shall ask for help of every kind, yea, for the help of death itself, but in vain, for there is no one who can in any way bring them the slightest help. My dear people, are these things indeed true? Whence have we learned these things? Who told us these things? Did Homer tell them to us? Did Plato? Did Virgil? Truth itself has told us these things, the very wisdom of God, who cannot lie. Is there then faith in the world? Have men the use of reason? Can they form a judgment about anything? How is it that such torpor exists in the very people who have believed these things? We are so diligent in warding off other and lesser evils. Why is it that we take no forethought as to how we may avoid the tortures of hell? The penalties which we have mentioned thus far are by no means the worst. There are others, yet more grievous still. The reckoning of divine justice demands that the sense of touch, through which were committed so many crimes, outrages, sacrileges, debaucheries, and adulteries, shall be tortured much more atrociously than the rest of the senses. The tormentor of this sense shall be a fire so mighty, so living, and so efficacious that our earthly fire compared to it seems not true, but painted fire. We cannot doubt that this fire will cause the mightiest affliction and torture, because it has been specifically created by God to be the instrument of his justice. My dear people, suppose that a living man were cast into a glowing furnace, and that the door were closed while he remained there for a solid hour. If we were to contemplate attentively the pain which would be his, we would not gain a clear understanding, but a mere scent, as it were, of what it is to live in hell. I ask you, what shoulders shall be able to bear those living flames? What breast would not be shattered by that eternity of tortures? As the prophet Isaiah says, which of you shall dwell with everlasting burnings? Isaiah chapter 33, verse 14. Need we say more? With this punishment another, and by no means a lesser one, will be joined. For the damned shall be tortured not only by the heat of fire, but by unbearable cold as well. If we rely upon the words of St. Basil the Great, scarcely any torture can be compared to that produced by the harshness of the bitterest cold. That saint has left us an account of the 40 martyrs. A certain most cruel and ferocious tyrant wished to torture these martyrs with an indescribable torment. He bore in mind that it was the dead of winter, and that they abode in a country which was bitterly cold by nature. Such was the cold which prevailed there that people could drive their wagons and pack animals over a certain ice-bound lake. The mightiest rivers ceased to flow in their courses, and became not so much rivers as roads paved with marble. He picked the night when the north winds were howling at their fiercest, and on this night ordered the martyrs to be exposed, naked, under the sky, and allowed to perish from lingering and indescribable torments. This, my dear people, shall be the sport of the damned. This shall be their sporting match, that, as Job says, they shall be bound over from excess of heat to showers of snow, and from showers of snow to excess of heat. Nor are these things figments or fables of poets. Hear what the Lord says to Job. Hast thou entered into the storehouses of the snow? Or hast thou beheld the treasures of the hail, which I have prepared for the time of the enemy, against the day of battle and war? Job chapter 38, verses 22 and 23. Hear the psalmist. Fire and brimstone and storms of winds shall be the portion of their cup. Psalm 10, verse 7. And if this portion is so bitter, what shall it be to drink the whole of the chalice? O unhappy people, how much better would it have been for you if you had never been born? O miserable eyes, which will be terrified by the horrendous forms of the demons, which will be tortured by the densest smoke, which will always be open to behold your miseries. O miserable ears, which will hear forever the sound of scourges and blasphemies and the groaning of the wretched. O wretched nostrils, which shall smell forever the stench of a most filthy place and of stinking bodies. O wretched bellies and mouths, which shall be tormented by everlasting starvation and hunger, and intolerable thirst. O wretched members, which shall inhabit that well which vomits up sulphurous flames. Shall it be for 10 years, or 20, or 100, or 1,000? Not so, for this would be some sort of consolation. Truly, it shall be for eternity, and beyond, if a beyond could be found, eternity. O brief word, which signifies for us so lasting a reality. My dear people, this eternity is of such a nature that without it, no punishment can be judged to be heavy, neither with it can we reckon any punishment to be light. Nevertheless, with this salt shall the punishments of the damned be flavored. For the damned shall be tortured for as many ages as there are stars shining in heaven, as there are grains of sand on the seashore, yea, as there are drops of water in the ocean. And when these gulfs of ages have gone by, their sorrows shall begin all over again. This great wheel shall turn without end. The psalmist says, they are laid in hell like sheep. Death shall feed upon them. Psalm 48, verse 15. Sheep graze upon the surface leaves of plants, yet do not pluck the roots, so that the plant may grow again and be fed upon in their turn. Thus shall it be in the pastures of hell. Where are to be found the flocks of the damned, the pastors of torments and death, the pastor of the herd? The damned shall be led by death to pasture, and shall graze upon torments forever. Nor shall that fodder ever be exhausted, or that chalice of the Lord which they shall drink ever be drained dry. The dungeon of hell shall remain for as long as the kingdom of heaven exists. The damned shall be tortured for as long as the blessed shall rejoice. And finally, reprobates shall die in hell for as long as God himself shall live. And unless God ceases to be what he is, they shall not cease to be what they are. O death-dealing life, O immortal death, what name shall we finally give thee, life or death? If thou art life, why dost thou kill? If death, why dost thou endure? We may call thee neither life nor death, for each of these states has some good in it. Life has quiet, and death has an end. But thou hast neither quiet nor an end. What shall we say that thou art, if not the totality of evil contained in life and death? From death thou hast drawn torture, and from life duration. Truly, God despoiled life and death of that good which was in them, and what was left he placed in thee. O poisoned concoction, O bitter drug, from this chalice of the Lord all sinners shall drink.